So, very good afternoon to all of you present for this session. We are taking up the part 5 of the lecture series on the topic English in India, History, Evolution and Features. This is also the last session on this particular series. So, all of you who have been a part of the series right from the beginning, they know that we have discussed in details the inception of the idea of English in India, its history, its evolution, and the different features of English in India. Today, we are going to take that forward and try to conclude our entire discussion. So, those who want to see the other parts of the lecture series, these are all the live sessions which are hosted by BARTI online, and they are available in the channel, YouTube channel BARTI online, wherein you can see them. You can even type my name, Dr. Krishna Sinhamahapatra, and my lectures will be available. If you want to contact with me after the lecture series are over, you can contact me on my phone number. You also have the mailing ID which you can refer to, which is the ID of the YouTube channel which I host, which is Krishna's Canvas for audiobooks. Now coming to the brief idea of lecture 5. So we have been discussing some important works, important writers and their contribution, and then we started discussing different phases and how different writers in different phases have contributed significantly to the development of the idea of English in India. And we are going to start with the discussion of diasporic writers and their writings. So when we say diaspora, you can see a picture before you. These are the different words which actually come to our mind. It comes to our mind, about people, it's about country, it's about the flag, it's about the nationality, it's about migration, it's about heritage, it's about everything related to that, and then communication with people who are in a different country. So diasporic writing originated with this whole idea of people migrating to different countries and then writing from those socio-political contexts which have not been similar. Though, as they travel, they take their own story, their own history of their own land, and then in a new land, there is a kind of hybrid or a kind of intersection which happens related to their identity, related to their experience, and that is what is projected through their writings. So, diasporic writings play a very important role in defining how English has developed in the Indian context. So, diasporic literature is a very vast concept and an umbrella term. When we are saying umbrella term, it is referring to that it kind of refers to many things which come under it. That includes in it all those literary works written by the authors outside their native country, but these works are associated with native culture and background. So, those literary works written by the authors outside their native country. So these are actually written by the authors outside their native country, but these works are associated with native culture and background. When we are saying native, it is referring to the culture or the background from which they have originated. So the works are literary works written by authors outside their native country, that is their motherland. However, these works are associated with the native culture and background. In this wide context, all those writers can be regarded as diasporic writers who write outside their country but remain related to their homeland through their works. So, all those writers can be regarded as diasporic writers who write outside their country but remained related to their homeland through their works. So it is their works which have been the connecting link of their, of their memory, of their experience, of sharing their emotions. So the works have been the center point for this. So diasporic literature has its roots in the sense of loss and alienation. When we are saying loss, it's the loss of that fragrance of your motherland, loss of your association with so many people physically, and also alienation wherein you are actually made to be alone, away from other people, so which emerged as a result of migration and expatriation. So as a result of people moving from one country to another, and one being the homeland and another being the host land where they are actually kind of staying. So in this land wherein they have gone and they have migrated and they are staying, that is where they kind of create their own identity. But they cannot forget their root and their origin of their homeland. So literature of old generation of diasporic Indian writers like Raja Rao, G.V. Desani, Santha Rama Rao, Dalchandra Rajan, Nirad Chaudhary, Ved Mehta mainly look back at India and hardly ever record their experiences away from India as expatriates. It is as if these writers have discovered their Indianness when they are out of India. And you will see that when we are in India, we are living in that country, we are living in that state for that matter, we don't pay attention to the minute details. We don't take a lot of pride, we don't take a lot of attention and care to the things which are there around us. What happens is that we take these things very casually. However, when we migrate to a new country and we do not get those simple things around us all the time, that is when we feel that urge, that need, that kind of belongingness, and that kind of emotional attachment to the things which are not there with us anymore. As a result, your Indianness, your feeling for your country perhaps gets even more strong when you go to another country. And this is what gets projected in the diasporic literature, because it's an outlet of the soul for the people who are living outside India. So evidently they have the benefit of looking at their homeland from the outside. So an outside view of their own homeland can be seen. The distance offers detachment that is so required to have a clear insight of their native land. So it actually gives you a clear insight of the native land. So you get a better understanding of your country when you are distant. So you will see that something happens to us. There is an incident. We do not understand it very well at that moment. But then later on, when we reflect on it, we think on it, that is when we slowly understand that even better. That is what happens with the diasporic writers. Since they have left their country and they are living in another country, that is where they kind of feel more attached and are able to have a better sight or insight of their land. So these writers register their away from India experiences, and even if they look back at their motherland, it is often in a melancholic tone rather than nostalgia. So the tone which they have is melancholic. So these modern diasporic Indian writers can be grouped into two different classes, wherein one class includes those who have spent a part of their life in India and have carried the baggage of their native land offshore. This is category number one. And the category number two is the other class comprises those who have been raised since childhood outside India. So there can be two possibilities, right? The first generation diasporic writers who have left their country because of some job, particular professional reason or some family reason, they have left and they have gone to a foreign country. That is one perspective. The other class comprises of those who have been raised since childhood outside India. So their children, so the second generation people who are living, so they have not been raised in India and still they know about India and then they can write about India. So the writers of the previous group have a factual displacement, whereas those belonging to the latter group find themselves rootless. Both the groups of writers have created an enviable corpus of English literature. So they have created an enviable in the sense they have created very good, very rich body of literature. Now, in the novels of 1980s, there are different modes of narrative techniques. They project what? Social realism, mythical realism, historical romance, magical realism, which is very much there in Salman Rushdie's works, and Bildungsroman. That is slowly development of that particular character. So Salman Rushdie, V.S. Naipaul. Now these names which I'm taking, it's your duty to make sure that you see and read about them, their novels, and you do not miss them because you get questions from these important writers. Then Amitav Ghosh, Taslima Nasreen, Vasanji, Chitra Banerjee, Divakaruni, Anita Desai, Kiran Desai, Bharti Mukherjee, Suketu Mehta, Vandana Singh, Bharti Kirchner, Amit Chaudhary, Rohinton Mistry, Gita Mehta, Deena Mehta, Indira Ganeshan, Uma Vasudeva, Namita Gokhale, Jhumpa Lahiri, Vikram Chandra, Manil Suri, Richard Gasta, Siddharth Dhanwan, Sangvi, Rana Das Gupta are Indian diasporic writers who live overseas and they're actually writing. So if you are following them, the study about them can never be over because every time you read something, there will be another new book on the shelves. So you can always keep on reading them. Now let us discuss the themes which are usually followed by them. So generally, diasporic literature deals with alienation, displacement, existential rootlessness, nostalgia, quest of identity. So alienation wherein you are actually alienated or you're isolated or you are distanced from other people. Displacement wherein you are moved from one position to another. Existential rootlessness because the diasporic writers, they themselves are very, very, kind of overwhelmed and they're kind of even sometimes they're very, very confused related to their identity because they feel that sense of rootlessness. Where is their root? Where are they? Nostalgia and quest of identity. Nostalgia for the country which they have left. And finally, quest of identity. So it also addresses issues related to the amalgamation or disintegration of cultures. It reflects the immigrant experience that comes out of the immigrant settlement. It reflects what? The immigrant experience that comes out of the immigrant settlement. Then diasporic writing unfolds the experiences of unsettlement and dislocation at some or the other level. A diasporic text can be investigated in terms of location, dislocation, and relocation. So, location, that is from where they are, then dislocation, how they have been uprooted from there, and then relocation in a new land. So, all these, a diasporic text can be investigated in terms of these. So the changing designation of home and accompanying nervousness about homelessness and unfeasibility of going back are recurrent themes in diasporic literature. So the changing designation of home and accompanying nervousness about what? About homelessness, because your idea of home is kind of, it's always evolving. If you are in one country at one place, then it is kind of you are kind of rooted. But when you are moving here and there, what happens? You are homeless, and your homelessness kind of gets reflected in the whole idea of identity and being rooted. And unfeasibility of going back. So once you have left a place, you have gone to a new place, it becomes difficult for you to return back to the origin from where you have returned. So this also keeps on coming. So the favorite theme of diasporic literature is East-West fusion that makes its presence felt in the English-speaking world by breaking a new ground, both in themes and techniques of both fiction and poetry. There are many European characters that come to India and adopt the Indian culture and also remember their culture. So there creates a matter of compare and contrast between the East and West. So they come to India and what adopt the Indian culture and also remember their culture. So there creates a matter of compare and contrast between the East and West. Now, Javalas, a backward place, shows a very fusion of the East and the West as a European sensibilities mixes with Indian sensibility and presents the compare and contrast of two cultures. So the identity itself is a mixture of the East and the West. So when this mixture is there, you cannot get a one uniform, very homogeneous kind of identity. It's a heterogeneous identity wherein different layers of identity based on different cultures is existing. So in this context, Balchandra Rajan writes, the presence of two cultures in one's mind forms a wider and therefore saner basis on which to originate the quest for identity. So the presence of two cultures in one's mind. What? Two cultures, not one, but two cultures in one's mind forms a wider and therefore saner basis on which to originate the quest for identity, and the discordance between the two cultures can be creative as well as merely confusing. Perhaps one can go further and suggest that the man with mixed allegiances is contemporary everyman. So two of the earliest novels that effectively depicted diasporic Indian characters are Anita Desai's Bye Bye Blackbird and Kamala Markandaya's The Nowhere Man. Bharti Mukherjee's novels like Wife and Jasmine depict Indians in the US, the land of immigrants, both legal and illegal, before globalization got into its momentum. And then, if you see that Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, she is also writing, and her first, the idea of the Mistress of Spices, which has also been made into a movie. If you know about it, you can watch it. The Mistress of Spices depicts Tilo, the protagonist, as an exotic character to reveal the migrants' anguish. Then, Amitabh Ghosh's The Shadow Line. So this is also a very, very good novel. If possible, you can just read it. And the idea and the imagery and the implication of the shadow lines is very well presented in this novel by Ghosh. So it shows the extent of rootlessness encountered by character born and brought up in a foreign land. Then Amit Chaudhary, in his novel Afternoon Rag, portrays the lives of Indian students in Oxford. These writers also depicted the positive aspect of displacement. So the positive aspect of what? Of displacement. The ranks of second generation diasporic Indian writers like Meera Syal, Shashi Tharoor, Hari Kunzru, Sunetra Gupta, Jhumpa Lahiri, etc. have faithfully demonstrated the lives of both first and second generation immigrants in the US. So as I was saying that there are different experiences. One set of experience refers to the experiences of what? Experiences of the first generation immigrants in the US. the second generation immigrants in the US. So this is possible because big issues like religious discrimination and racial intolerance are no longer the main concern of these writers. So, the idea is that the Indian diasporic literature has raised different issues and aspects of immigrants' lives. So there are different ideas. Your idea of identity is kind of gets changed. Many of you, I could, through your interaction, I could understand that you are actually living in some different state. You have migrated from your own state, and you are living in a different state in a different city. So somehow you can actually kind of see, or you can actually find it or reference to it in other people's lives as well as in your life. When you are going to a different place, you are going to a different country, and that is what is shared by the diasporic writers. The fictional narratives like Bharti Mukherjee's Jasmine, Meera Sayal's Anita and Me, Jhumpa Lahiri's The Namesake, Chitra Banerjee Devakarune's The Mistress of Spices have shown the Indians living in England, America, and where they have immigrated either to advance their financial condition or to seek jobs due to unemployment at homelands, or for better education of their children or better professional opportunities. So see, you move on to a different state not because you want to be, in any way worse than what you are right now. That's quite obvious. So you are going to a different city, you are going to a different state, you're going to a different country. The purpose is some kind of improvement, some kind of betterment. Now that can be for seeking job due to unemployment in homeland, or for better education of their children, or for better professional opportunities. That depends on what you are actually kind of aiming and going there. But at the end of the day, whenever you are taking that step, it is for some kind of good or better prospect. So it has also depicted, so these works like The Namesake, then Sayal's Anita and Me, and Devakarun is the Queen of Dreams, have also depicted the issue of intergenerational gap of the Indian diaspora, where the first generation parents expect from their children to live by the value system of Indian culture, which they force on them at home through food, dress, customs, rituals, language, beliefs, etc. But the children encountering different cultural surroundings outside find the latter have fascination sandwiched between the two cultures and confused like Gogol in The Namesake. So Gogol, his pet name, and the idea of name, the idea of culture is referred to. And Meena in Anita and Me, who daily hear and bear the racial comments because of their brown skin, as they are not able to decide which is their real home, India or the country where they have been born and brought up. So herein, you will see that if you watch certain movies, for that matter, you can take up this very famous movie of Shah Rukh Khan, which was filmed so many years back. But there also you see that, when the character of Amrish Puri, he is actually talking about his daughters. He's saying that I am very, very happy that I'm able to keep a part of India alive in the foreign land. So this quest of the parents of first generation kind of diasporic identity is very much reflected there, and the idea that they are very rigid about their value system related to Indian culture. Though as their new generations kind of come into the picture, they are more confused because they have not seen the Indian culture or the culture of their own homeland and experienced it as much as the first generation have done. Now, nostalgia, loss, betrayal, and duty are the foundations of new homes as diasporic protagonists adjust to new countries. In adjusting to new countries, issues of acculturation and assimilation become the central point as these immigrants negotiate the unbalance of their hyphenated identities. So, identity becomes the core issue in any investigation of diaspora, a particularly diasporic identity that is made of various factors and sub factors. This diasporic identity is multi level. It is also based on the history or conditions leading to what? Leading to migration, as well as the individual responses to these circumstances. So, identity becomes a core issue in any investigation of diaspora, wherein the concept of identity is in itself not very clear. The idea of identity is kind of ambiguous, because a particular diasporic identity is made of various factors and sub-factors. So this diasporic identity is multi-level because there are different levels, there are different shades to it. It is also based on the history or conditions leading to migration, as well as individual responses to these circumstances. So a new aspect of this life in exile. Why life in exile? Because you are outside your own homeland, you are in a different land, and this life is as if you are leading a life of exile. Life in exile got added in post-independence period in India, when many people in the 60s and 70s began moving towards developed countries on their own agreement, either to avoid political or economic difficulties of their native land, or to study, or as professionals, which Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak calls as part of brain drain. So now at least the brain drain is not that much evident, but earlier scope for people who wanted to do or who wanted to study or do some higher qualification or do really good in their life was kind of less. So the thing is that it's kind of they moved on to the West, more developed countries, with this hope of getting better opportunity and leading a better life. And this resulted in the phenomenon which is termed as brain drain. Now, poetry is not as popular as the novel or short story, but still there are some major contributions by Indian diaspora in Indo-American literature. So R.K. Ramanujan occupies an important place among Indo-American poets with a wish for connectedness and the absence of connection are the two facts of Ramanujan's poetic world. So, a wish for connectedness and the absence of connection. What are the two? Wish for connectedness and absence of connection. These are the two facts of Ramanujan's poetic world. So, Meena Alexander's migrant music deals with belonging and home, which are created by the excavation and recomposition of the past. So, Aga Shahid Ali is a Kashmir exile. The themes of homeland, loss, and exile are central to Ali's work. The Half-Inch Himalayas, a collection of poems, depict in 4 sections the very spaces opened up in exile. So, a nostalgia map of America is a volume that reveals alien spaces. What spaces reveals? alien spaces of hyphenated identity. When we are saying hyphenated identity, it is talking about the dual identity, which is a mixture of two identities. So, reveals the alien spaces, the space which these identities occupy, how alien it is. So, alien spaces of hyphenated identities. Sharat Chandra's April Najangur views and remembers India through an expatriate's sensitive awareness. Once or twice, it contains some of his earliest passionate reflections of America's attitude towards its immigrants. The Family of Mirrors is an extension of earlier immigrant themes. His Immigrants of Laws deals with universality of dislocation and sharply divisive nature of America and social hierarchies. Vikram Seth, a well-known Indian expatriate novelist, has also contributed to his collections of poems like Golden Gate, All You Who Sleep Tonight. Poets like Vijay Sheshadri, Ravi Shankar, Maua Khosla, Pragita Sharma have also contributed their literary talent. So it's an ever-emerging kind of field. So there are contributions of many people. So next category which we can read is about the Indian women writers. So women writers in India have been creating such spaces through their writing wherein women novelists have developed their own style which expresses feminine sensibility. Each one is different from the other. So women writers have been creating what? Such spaces through their writing. Because whenever we are writing, we get an opportunity of making our voice felt. We get an opportunity to put across our ideas and create our own identity before others. So women novelists have developed their own style which expresses feminine sensibility or feminine sensibility. So that is the main difference or the main focus of any kind of writing by Indian women writers. So each one is different from the other. Each one of them has her own world of experiences, her own way of looking at things, and her own way of character portrayal. Because every writer is an unique writer in his or her terms, and as a result has her own way of looking at things and own way of character portrayal. So one point is common in them. They show a keen sense of awareness of social change. So it was mandatory for them to create their own space in the male-dominated literary world. So a keen sense of what? Awareness of social change. So these women are in the quest of creating a change and a social change, and it's compulsory, mandatory in the sense compulsory for them to create their own space in the male-dominated literary world. Many an Indian women novelists have explored female subjectivity in order to kind of do justice to the revealing of a woman through a woman's eyes. So a major development in Indian fiction is the growth of a feminist or women-centered approach that seeks to project and interpret experience from the point of a feminine consciousness and sensibility. So some works by early women novelists are Raj Lakshmi Devi's The Hindu Wife and Shaguna, Cornelia Sorabji's Love and Life Behind the Parda, and Between the Twilights, Iqbal Unisa Hussain abstinence, parda and polygamy, and life in an Indian Muslim household. Theme, the major theme of these works, the theme is from childhood to womanhood, developed society respecting women in general. So Santha Rama Rao's Remember for the House, Ruth Pawar Jawala's first novel To Whom She Will, 1955, and her later novel Heat and Dust, Kamala Markandaya's Two Virgins, Rama Mehta's Inside the Haveli, and Gita Hariharan, The Thousand Faces of Night, are some of the leading women writers writing in Indian English literature. The present day women writers have dared to express what their predecessors have either ignored or shied away from expressing. So the present day women writers have done what? Have dared to express what? So express their predecessors, so people who came, the women who came before them, their predecessors have either ignored or shied away from expressing. The predecessors, the writers who came before them, they have not actually taken up certain important subjects and were really, really shy to express them. However, these women writers made a distinct effort by kind of expressing what the predecessors had kind of thought of. So the themes, the style, syntax, and even symbolism have been affected by their present space and time. So the themes, the style, syntax, and even symbolism have been affected by their present space and time. Women writers like Jhumpa Lahiri have succeeded in creating fiction which re-examines the lives of the women characters using the tools of postmodernism. So these women writers dare to reinterpret Indian women's social, psychological, and even personal identities. The search for a new different self became an unwritten code for all these women who personally had issues with their own identities. Now, right from Anita Desai, Nayantara Sehgal to Jhumpa Lahiri and Anita Nair, Indian women writers in English have created milestones both in their themes and techniques. The enigma called Indian woman has been redefined and the 14 myth of Indian womanhood reinterpreted. So the hidden dreams, desires, and fears of the real Indian woman have found expression in the writings of these writers. Writers in the sense Anita Desai, Nayantara Sehgal, Jhumpa Lahiri, and Anita Nair. The image of woman in fiction has undergone a change during the last 4 decades, wherein women writers have moved away from traditional portrayals of enduring self-sacrificing women towards conflicts, female characters searching for identity, no longer characterized and defined simply in terms of their victim status. So their victim status have been in the post-colonial writing as the subaltern among subalterns, wherein the men are the subalterns and the women are the subalterns amongst subalterns. Now, a major preoccupation in recent Indian women writing has been a delineation, that is, drawing representation of inner life and subtle interpersonal relationships. So, in a culture where individualism and protest have often remained alien ideas and marital bliss, and the woman's role at home is a central focus. It is interesting to note the emergence of not just an essential Indian sensibility, but an expression of cultural displacement. So, the idea of cultural displacement and the idea that Indian sensibility as an expression of cultural displacement is interesting. So women's presentation is more assertive, more liberated in their view, and more articulate in their expression than the women of the past. So Indian writing in English at present is gaining ground rapidly. In the realm of fiction, both at home and abroad. Indian women writers started questioning the prominent old patriarchal domination. They are no longer puppets in the hands of man. So what have they done? They have questioned the prominent old patriarchal domination. They have tried to become more rational, because earlier, as we know, the women were not given the scope of getting education. As a result, we see that they were talking about the different rights and the rights of equality because they were educated. So today the works of Kamala Markandaya, Nayantara Saigal, Anita Desai, Geeta Hariharan, Sashi Deshpande, Kiran Desai and Manju Kapoor and many more have left an indelible imprint on the readers of Indian fiction in English. So they have left an indelible imprint, something which cannot be hidden. Where? On the readers of Indian fiction in English. Now, we have discussed diasporic literature, diasporic writers. Now, we are going to move on to the next section, which is Dalit literature. So it is a very evolving field in Indian English, in India, and the contribution of various Dalit writers is immense. It is also interesting to see how their identities have emerged, how their socio-political kind of position in the society has evolved, and how their work of art or literature is worthy emulation. So the term Dalit literally means oppressed and is often used, so it's taken from the Hindi and Sanskrit word Dalan or Dalit, which means oppressed, and is used to refer to the untouchable castes or casteless sects of India. Dalit is also called outcast. It is a self-designation for a group of people traditionally regarded as untouchables. So Dalits are a mixed population of numerous caste groups all over India, South Asia, and all over the world. There are many different names proposed for defining this group, like Ashprosh, untouchable, Harijans, children of God, as we know Gandhiji said, Dalits, broken people, etc. So etymology of the word Dalit, wherein the word Dalit comes from the Sanskrit and it means downtrodden, surpassed or suppressed, crushed or broken to pieces. It was first used by Jyotirao Phule. So, his Mahatma Jyotirao Phule in the 19th century in the context of the oppression faced by the erstwhile untouchable castes of the twice born Hindus. So Mahatma Gandhi coined the word Harijan, and then it got translated as children of God to identify the former untouchables. So this was the term used by Gandhiji, and there are different references to it, and it has added on to the identity of being a Dalit or downtrodden, which is literally meaning broken to pieces or crushed or suppressed. In an era when issues regarding human rights occupy the central stage, literary portrayals of marginalized communities are of utmost importance. So there has been a change, and what kind of change? Can anybody identify? So the change is that human rights started occupying the central stage. Literary portrayals of marginalized communities became very important. So Dalit literature is an attempt to bring to the fore, that is, to bring before people what? The discrimination, brutality, and ostracization faced by the Dalit community in India. The members of Dalit community have been pushed to the margins, and their lived experiences have been disregarded by the majority. So the Dalit community have been what pushed to the margins, and their lived experiences have been disregarded by the majority. Their stories have been deemed unworthy to be written about. So, for ages, there has been discrimination against Dalit people. For ages, Dalit writing has been relegated to the periphery. They have not been given the center stage. Their stories have not been discussed and highlighted. And as a result, this is what the Dalit community, Dalit literature tries to do. So, their stories have been deemed unworthy to be written about. So, people have in general thought that their subject or their life or their things which they do is not or cannot be a kind of worthy suitable option for the representation of lived experiences. So the advent of Dalit literature, that is the way it started, comprising poems, novels, memoirs, and the like, is rectifying this situation slowly by depicting what? Depicting the nuances of the Dalit culture. So the advent or the introduction of the idea of Dalit literature, comprising of poems, novels, memoirs, and the like, rectifying this situation slowly by depicting the nuances of the Dalit culture. So, they were actually talking about the Dalit culture. So, Dalit literature is one of the most important literary phenomena in post independence India. That is trying to restore dignity to a community that has been wronged for ages. So, for ages, Dalit community has been wronged. That is, it has right, or rather, the proper rights and kind of the empowerment which they should have had was not there. So their struggles relating to their stigmatized identity as untouchables are finally being acknowledged. So the writings of B.R. Ambedkar, Jyotirao Phule, and Periyar constitute the foundation of Dalit socio-political movements and literary productions. So you need to remember who were the cornerstones of Dalit literature and Dalit identity. So it's B.R. Ambedkar, Jyotirao Phule, and Periyar, who constitute or who kind of contributed to the base of or constituted the foundation of Dalit socio-political movements and literary productions. So we cannot do without their ideas and how they have contributed to this body of literature, and how the principles of liberty, equality, fraternity are actually provided by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and hence when Dalit politics is completely dependent on the ideas of Mahatma Phule and Baba Saheb Ambedkar, we need to remember their contribution of the importance of Dalit literature. So Dalits are an important part of Indian society. Now, since ancient times, they have been subjugated by the upper caste. Dalit literature is the much needed outburst of the exploited people who have been robbed of their identity. So it's quite obvious that if you cannot give an outlet to your feelings, your anger, your frustration, then it is very difficult to lead a life properly. The much needed outburst of the exploited people have been robbed of their identities. So the people who have been or who have to face the situation where their identities, the essential of their identities have been taken away, it is Dalit literature which provides a much needed outburst of the exploited people. It's high time we make space for the self-narratives of Dalit authors that talk about their suppressed anger and legacy of ill treatment inflicted on them by the upper caste. So it's a high time we make space for the self-narratives of Dalit authors that talk about what? About their suppressed anger and legacy. That is the thing which they have inherited. What kind of legacy have they inherited? Legacy of ill treatment, which has been inflicted on them by the upper caste. The importance of Dalit literature. So for years, Dalits have been forced into work considered inferior by the upper caste. For example, they have been forced to do what? To do butchering, leather working, cleaning of rubbish, manual scavenging, and all these things. As a result, Dalits were segregated and kept away from So they have been kept away from participating in what? In mainstream culture. So they were not allowed access to what? To communal places of worship and quality education. How long will we as a society keep ignoring the rich literary potential of an entire community to keep feeding on the superiority complex of the upper caste? So how long we as a society keep ignoring what? Ignoring the rich literary potential of an entire community to keep feeding on the superiority complex of the upper caste. So how long it is the upper caste people who will think that they are superior, and they will kind of undermine the quality and richness of the people who have always been subjugated because of the kind of existing situations and the customs which have been following from day after day. So Dalit literature speaks of revolts, not passivity. So what does Dalit literature speak of? It speaks of revolts, not passivity. It inspires progress despite all odds, not backwardness. So this message can be beneficial for the entire world, wherein where many communities are still held captive by the self-interests of the oppressor. So Dalit literature urges its readers to fight for both what? Fight for bread and roses. The history of injustice this community has been suffering needs to stop once and for all, and Dalit literature takes a step towards bringing in a brighter tomorrow. Dalit literature is a new phenomenon in the modern era of literature where the tormenting experiences of Dalit untouchable writers are exposed to present the contemporary social mental condition before Dalit and non-Dalit readers. So Mulk Raj Anand was the first to insulate Dalit literature through his novels like Untouchable. Coolie in English, and they are simultaneously translated in English and different languages. The style of Dalit literature covers a wide range of literary genres. So this Dalit literature is made popular in Marathi by Marathi Dalit poets, writers. It solely aims at generating what awareness of Dalits about their social situation in the society to all conscious readers. So their works are kind of getaways. Their works are kind of mouthpieces for the people whom they are representing. That is the main purpose which it does. So there is a plenty of Dalit poetry expressing the violent, lashing experiences of poets' life effectively. So Narayan Sarve was one of the most prominent poets in the early Dalit literature. So his poems, or famous poem was Vidyapit. The other poets like Keshav Meshram, who had written Utkhanan, or excavation, Daya Pawar, writing Kondwara, that is suffocating enclosure, Namdev Dhasal Golpitha, the red light zone, and there are various others as well, like Triambak, Sapkal, Surang, Dynamite, and so on. So the new generation of Dalit poetry emerged as in the contemporary period as a result or protest against the oppressive traditional shackles. So the things which were going on for generations and generations, those things were confronted, questions were raised, and the main purpose of Dalit literature in general and Dalit poetry in particular can be said that in the process of creating this new world and this new way of questioning the age-old traditions, they made way for Dalit aesthetics, wherein Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram got replaced with liberty, equality, and fraternity. So unlike the tremendous Dalit poetry as powerful means of Dalit expression, folk poetry true practice for propagating Dalit sensibility. Vaman Dada Kardak, Bhimrao Kardak, Vital Umap, and so on are prominent Dalit folk poets. The folk poetry includes ballads, which enthrall the common people of the Dalit community. It too creates awareness about Dalit reform movements. Now, short stories and novels are important genres of literature that exploited by Dalit writers for expressing Dalit sensibility aptly. So the short stories like Fakira, Annabhav Sathe's Davandi, wherein Shankar Rao Kharat Jeva Mi Jaat Chorli Hoti, 1963 Maran Swasth Hot Ahe, that is death is becoming cheap, and Baburao Bagul's Red Stone, N.G. Shende are best examples of Dalit short stories by Dalit writers. Now comes the most famous and the most kind of exploited kind of or the most exploited genre, which is Dalit auto narratives. So Dalit writers mostly interested or interpreted their own experiences regarding social injustice in their own autobiographies. And you read it, try to find out autobiography, you will see almost everyone used to use what? Used to or has written their own autobiography. So in the 1960s and 70s, Dalit autobiographies in India emerged as a powerful tool for what? For social and political protest. So Dalit autobiographies have registered a protest against the existing realities, and they have withheld the real picture of their existence, how they have grown up, what challenges have they faced. So Baluta, a groundbreaking autobiography by Dagdu Maruti Pawar, and the question the caste system and the social stigma associated with Dalit names was one of the first and most impactful works. Then many other Dalit writers followed suit, asserting their identity and protesting oppression through memoirs, poetry, and autobiographical fiction. Then Anna Bhau Sathe's autobiography, Fakira, Baburao Bagul's autobiographical novel, Jevami, Zaat Solli Hoti, Baby Kamle's Jina Amucha, Urmila Pawar's The Weave of My Life, Shantabai Kamle's Maja Jalmachi Chitrakatha, which has been translated as The Kaleidoscopic Story of My Life, wherein Baby Kamle's Jina Amuche has been translated by Maya Pandit. So all as The Prisons We Broke, and Urmila Pawar's translation as The Weave of My Life. So Aidan has been translated into The Weave of My Life. Then Om Prakash Valmiki's autobiographical poetry, or the autobiographical work, which is Jutan. Then Orukeri, Bamas Karukku are among the writers. Authors such as Narendra Jadhav, Loknath Yashwant, Kumar Anil, G.K. Ainapure, Avinash Gaikwad, and Santosh Padmakar Pawar write of their achievements, while Urmila Pawar, Shashma Deshpande, Usha Kiran Atram, Ashalata Kamle, Sandhya Rangari, Kavita Morwankar, and Chaya Koregaonkar explore the interaction or intersection of gender and the other parameters related to that. So then comes Dalit women's autobiographies and testimonials in Dalit literature. So the testimonial is for Dalit women a powerful medium to protest against adversaries within and without. Writes Urmila, or rather, in context of their writing, Sharmila Rege quotes, or we get it from Sharmila Rege's, she has written the afterword, The Weave of My Life, for Urmila Pawar's book, which is translated, as I said, was translated by Dr. Maya Pandit, who was actually he's from Kolhapur and has taught in various eminent universities like IFLU, Hyderabad. So Bamas Karukku, this Tamil work translated into English with the same title, highlights the issues of caste, class, and gender as important markers for social exclusion. So Bama's writing has been praised for breaking taboos and giving voice to the marginalized. So Urmila Pawar's Aidan, which is translated into English as The Weave of My Life, a Dalit women's memoirs in 2008, Pawar compares her act of writing about her life with her mother's weaving of bamboo baskets, representing the pain, suffering, and agony of their experiences. However, Urmila Pawar also mentions that, for unlike her mother, who kind of used to weave her sad, sadness, her suffering, her agony through the weaving of the bamboo baskets, her experience is the kind of weaving through words. So her weaving through words has actually empowered her, which was not there in case of her mother, who was actually weaving bamboo baskets or aidans only. Then comes Shantabai Dani's For Us These Nights and Days. This testimonial recounts her participation in protest against British colonial authority, her arrest and detainment in Yarwara jail in 1946. So Dani was the secretary of the Nashik branch of Scheduled Caste Federation at the time, a significant accomplishment for a Dalit woman. So, next comes Kumud Paude's Antasphot, which is Thoughtful Outburst, 1981. So Paude emphasizes that her outburst is not emotional but analytical, examining the experiences of individuals and communities. She highlights what the double exploitation faced by women, Dalit women in culture based on hierarchy. Then comes Baby Kamle's, as I said, China Amuche, which is about the prisons we broke. So Kamle's work underscores the inextricability of the individual and the collective in Dalit narratives by contextualizing her work against the backdrop of the 5 decades history of the Mahar community. Now, we will be discussing some important works in this particular genre. When I Hid My Caste, stories by Baburao Bagol, translated by Jerry Pinto. So, Jerry Pinto translated the work. So, through the experiences of the people pushed to the fringes of our society, Bagul portrays the rage and horror that define the Dalit community. His refusal to sugarcoat. Why sugarcoat? Because you will see that the traditional Marathi literature or English literature, Indian English literature is or represents the harshness of kind of sugarcoat. That is, use good words, nice words in order to say such things. However, we see that Bagul refuses to sugarcoat for the sake of the comfort of the upper caste readers and has been an important step towards revolutionizing Dalit literature. So, as I was saying, that if the aesthetics of the traditional Marathi or Indian literature is kind of defined by the aesthetics of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, in Dalit literature, it kind of got, you can say, substituted by the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and projections of the difficulties of life has been very, very, in black and white. There is no gray shade. They have actually said something which is bad as bad, something good as good. So the depiction of the vicious caste system and the repercussions suffered by its victims is raw and thought-provoking. Then the Poison Bread, translations from modern Marathi Dalit literature by Arjun Dangle. So, this anthology consists of essays, short stories, speeches, poetry, and autobiographical extracts. After being silenced for centuries, the Dalits of Maharashtra won't have it any longer. So, thanks to the social movement launched by Dr. Ambedkar, their voices are finally being recognized. And this extraordinary anthology made a significant contribution to the field of Dalit literature. So, it's a kind of an anthology wherein different works by different writers is brought together and it is a wonderful read which you can read. Then comes Love After Babel and other poems by Chandra Mohans or Chandra Mohan S. So this politically charged poetry collection by Dalit poet. Who is the poet? Chandra Mohan S. Sheds light on the caste-based oppression and how it causes deep-seated impacts that can't be undone overnight. He also expresses his solidarity with various other marginalized groups and discusses how instances of Islamophobia and gender violence have become rampant in contemporary India. Then Seasons of Palm by Perumal Murugan. So translated from Tamil, this book tells the story of a Dalit boy working for a non-Dalit family. The relationships he shares with his family and the goats he herds have been portrayed with a lot of care. No matter how hard he tries to cling to happiness, the daily humiliations of untouchability and hunger never leave his side. Then comes a very famous one, which is Bama's Karuk. So when Bama Faustina left the convent and wrote her own autobiography, her language was labeled unacceptable by the Tamil publishing industry. And it's because of the straightforward language, the bold language which is used. So it's translated from the Tamil original by Lakshmi Holmstrom, and the original title is Karukku. Therefore, she published her work privately in 1992. This memoir breaks traditional boundaries and is a classic example of subaltern writing. Subaltern, when we are saying, we have to remember Ranajit Guho, we'll have to remember Dipesh Chakrabarti, we'll have to remember Gayatri Chakrabarti's Spivak and their contributions in the field of subaltern studies, and how this writing by a Dalit woman is actually a representation of the section of the society who are the subalterns among subalterns, and rather even more again subalterns. So thrice being the subalterns. So they are subalterns on the basis of caste, class, and gender, which makes this social position very, very difficult, and which makes Spivak question, can the subaltern speak? That is, whether voice is heard or not. So, revolving around caste-related oppression within the Catholic Church, this book is an excellent sketch of the conflicts between the individual and the community. Now, talking of the various references which we are talking about, so KRS Iyengar, Indian Writing in English, Sterling Publishers Private Limited, Bombay. Then we can read the book by Nayak, M.K. Nayak, A History of English Literature, Sahitya Academy, Delhi. Then Nayak's Aspects of Indian Writing in English, Macmillan, New Delhi, 1979. Then B.R. Agarwal's Major Trends in the Post-Independence Indian English Fiction. Then Sangeeta Padhi, Indian Poetry in English. Then Arvind Krishna Mehrotra, Concise History of Indian Literature in English. Kaustuv Chakrabarti's Indian Drama in English. And the story of English in India is interesting, because herein you can actually understand how the idea of English in India originated and how it actually got projected. Now, we will just quickly discuss, in respect to Bama and Bama's Karukku, the other women, Dalit women writers who came into the fore. So, when we are saying Dalit women writers, over the period of time, there has been an evolution of the term. And you can also listen or you can also read about the fully Ambedkarite feminist writers. You can read about the various Dalit women writers who have dedicated their existence and their identity on the philosophy of these two phenomenal social reformers who are Babasaheb Ambedkar and Mahatma Phule. And it is in Maharashtra, that is where you find this series of writers who have spoken about their contribution, wherein we can talk about the first book which we were saying, which is by Shantabai Kamble. No, Shantabai Kamble. Shantabai Kamble's book we have just kind of spoken about. And then we can talk about Baby Kamble's book for Baby Kamble. And then we can talk about Urmila Pawar's book. So Urmila Pawar's. When we are talking about their wherein Urmila Pawar's book is Aidan, the Weave of My Life. The book of Baby Kamble is what? The Prisons We Broke. And when we are talking about Shantabai Kamble, then her work has not been actually translated, but there are references. You can get a reference of their works when we have discussed the Dalit women photobiographies and testimonials in Dalit literature, wherein Urmila Pawar's Aidan and Baby Kamble's Our Lives has been discussed. We can also add to this list, as I said, Shantabai Kamble, whose work is also significant, which is Maza Jalmachi Chitrakatha. So, the kaleidoscopic story of my life. For Baby Kamble, it's Our Lives, which is the prisons we broke. So what kind of prisons they were in, how they broke these prisons, how they got their voice, how they could project that, and how in the entire context. Yes, I can see two of you, Prem and Shetkari Bread. So both of you, good evening. So their work and the aesthetics, as I was saying, you can read about Dalit aesthetics, and a lot of research work is going on this particular field related to Dalit literature, and specifically related to women autobiographies by Dalit women writers. And their autobiographies are many a times termed as what? Are termed as testimonials. Why testimonials? Testimonials because they are very, very true to kind of the reality. If you read about Urmila Pawar and their or Baby Kamble, their interviews, you will see that they have written that one of their main purpose for writing these testimonials, that is their autobiographies, is to project their idea and to project their condition, to project their hardships, to project the kind of difficult situation which they have faced and which they have overcome in the process of writing their and specifically talking about writers. During the time when originally, initially, they didn't have the kind of women, Dalit women didn't have that agency. They didn't have that kind of platform for writing their experiences. Because of the contribution of, again, these phenomenal writers. And then we have to refer to the Dalit Panther movement also, which it includes important, you know, people, important writers, and important contributors who came together. And this Dalit Panthers movement was more an imitation of the idea of Black Panthers. So there is this book on Dalit Panthers which you can actually read, which will give you more insight into Dalit. What do you mean by Dalit Panther? How it is influenced by Black Panthers. There is also this book by Sharmila Rege, which is Writing Caste, Writing Gender, which we have discussed when we have taken up literary theory. Which is significant because it also highlights, and it is basically, you know, it brings together various autobiographies which are written by Dalit women writers, and hence you can get an overview of the autobiographies written by them. Since I have done my research work on this topic, I have also got the opportunity of reading these autobiographies in their original and also in Marathi. So if you get a chance, you should always read the original texts. So all the topics which we have read, for example, literary theory, literary criticism, and now which we are doing and we are about to finish, which is English in India, it's advisable that you read the original texts. For example, literary criticism, if we have read Wordsworth, then reading Wordsworth's original, the write-up, his philosophy is very, very important. Here also, as we are discussing the Dalit Panthers, then who were the Dalit Panthers? So it's a social organization that seeks to combat what? Caste discrimination. So it was led by a group of Maha writers and poets, which included various names like Raja Dhale, Namdev Dhasal, and J.V. Pawar. And sometime in between the second and third semester of 1972, so the movement's very significant days were from the 1970s through 1980s, and it was later joined by many Dalit Buddhist activists. And why it is significant is that the writers, the poets, and the contributors who became a part of it, they were all influenced by Babasaheb Ambedkar and his philosophy and his idea. And interestingly, the participation of women was considerably less. However, slowly Dalit women also kind of gained their voice, and they tried to explain their existence, and they tried to speak about their identity. So it's basically an evolving field. Many writers are writing, and their writing, their translations are actually a great contribution to the existing kind of culture which is there, the writing culture, though they were belonging, or they still belong to the periphery to some extent, but the position which was there earlier has changed and evolved a lot. And we as readers and as practitioners, and when you are in a good position, it becomes important that we kind of make sure that we give them the position which they deserve. And they will themselves, through these important works like Kuruku and Daidan and Antasfort and Jina Muche, if you actually read them, you see the kind of significance which they carry, and how they have been able to create their own space through their own voice. And the ideology of Babasaheb Ambedkar and Mahatma Phule has really helped them to see that way. So the important works which we discussed, that is When I Hid My Caste, Poison Bread, which is translations. As we said, if you read this book, you will actually be able to read various poems and translations and extracts. And then Love After Babel and other poems, Seasons of Palm, and yes, the most significant related to women, Phule Ambedkarite writers, is here, which is Karukku, which you can always refer to. So this kind of brings us to the end of our discussion on the topic English in India. So if we kind of refer back to what we did, so we started with the origin of English, how the missionaries had an important kind of influence on this process, and then how slowly it evolved through different writers, through their contribution, and then finally when we are seeing that there are different chartways or different pathways which have been created, and slowly it is developing in the future. So our time is over, so we will call it a day for today and also for this particular lecture series on this particular topic. So any questions? As I always ask you, if you have any questions, anything to share, you can use the chat box. That is the live chat option which is there. Wherein I can see two people who have kind of communicated. If you have anything, you can write down there. If not, as I shared my screen at the very beginning and I have shared my details with you, if you have missed it, you can actually see it through the live lecture which will be put up by, or which will be just be uploaded as we complete the live session. So you can actually connect with me on that number and or write to me through the mail, and any other discussion related to the topic can be taken up in this way. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining in and for contributing. So thank you. Have a good evening, and see you all in the next session with another topic.